and somebody just, I'm going happy bucking, so. We are so blessed to have Dr. Hoadley and our Tolles Community Center. I am very proud of the fact that I was able to serve on their school board for 3 years, and every time I go back, I just am in awe of the campus that we have, the programs that we're offering our students. And I'm really encouraging all of you, if you haven't had the opportunity, I know we've done a Tolles tour here at one of our meetings, and hopefully we'll be able to resurrect that again. But an outstanding evening, in large part due to our host, Dr. Hoadley. So Dr. Hoadley, thank you. Dr. Hoodley, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I just said, hey, she did all the heavy lifting, and he, as all of you know, is a very humble person, but it was a great event, and our doors are always open for a tour. Great adult education program as well, so don't want to forget that. Thanks.
I'm looking forward to that welding class.
Yep. We can do that together. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. I'd like that. Any other announcements? Well, I guess we have to settle for welcoming the Sergeant at Arms.
Yeah, it's a nice one. No, I thought I said either.
Right, oh, yeah.
Good morning. Per usual, the standard is, does everybody have a badge with their name on it, their pin? I'm not big on the cards, but that's. Enough said. If you don't, please pay $1. If you selected Kentucky in your pool last night, you owe $1. And no condolences, because glad to see it happen to Calipari. You're so well loved, yes. Does anyone else have a happy buck? Oh, come on, some good things have to have been happening besides the Kentucky. Okay.
My son is getting married, and they've settled on a date, March 22nd, 2025. And they're gonna celebrate at the zoo. So this Sunday, we're doing a tasting, a food tasting. Cool, excited about that. But then my daughter's, my son-in-law has accepted a place at the College of Dentistry in Ann Arbor. But that's okay. And he's got a full ride with the Air Force, so we're really excited about that.
Great, great. Anyone else? Yes, sir, Dr. Lee.
I'm gonna put 3 happy bucks in. So one is found out just about 2 weeks ago, my oldest daughter and her husband are expecting their first child. So we're gonna move into the world of being grandparents right now. So
Congratulations.
Give my money in that case. And the second is our 2 youngest will both graduate from OSU this May, and so all kids will be off the payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you can afford grandchildren. Yes. Pete.
I have a sad luck. So this stems off of Susan because her son-in-law, who's going to Ann Arbor, Michigan, his better half, Susan's daughter, I'm losing as an employee at Harlan Bay.
Oh.
Ann Arbor. So this is a sad luck because we adore Allie. So.
Great, thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll share. I'm glad to be back from ankle surgery, so I'm so thankful. So that was back in January. And also bittersweet, but we purchased a home in Lexington. So we're gonna be moving back to Kentucky, and hopefully Calipari will find him a home.
There's talk of that, I heard, yes. We have a couple of guests. First off, Bob, your wife did not sign in. Would you please introduce her?
My wife, Irene.
Susanna, is it Huang? A guest of Emmett? Correct? Thank you. Tara, and I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. Okay. Oh, okay. And then Mary? Okay. And Lane, you're with us again? How are you? Okay. A couple of things about today. One thing in 1963, the Beatles released their first album, Please Please Me. In 1870, now most of us would recognize the 1870 on the Ohio State Shield, but today in 1870, Ohio State University was established as the Ohio Agricultural and Mechanical College. So it was officially started today in 1870. In 1630, the first colonial legislation was passed prohibiting gambling. In 1882, Chester Arthur signed into law outlawing polygamy. And in 1933, if you were in college or my age when we had 3-2 beer, 1933 FDR signed the Cullen-Harrison Act legalizing the sale of beer and wine with up to 3.2% alcohol. And there's a gentleman whose birthday is today. So I don't know how many of you people are techies, or I thought Peter would be here because he might know this better, being a Denny Crane fan. But William Shatner is 93 years old. We'll have the drawing. Can you please draw? Okay. Ticket number is 698. 698. Would you like the large or small?
I think it's small. I owe a lot of bucks. Go on.
There you go. Once again, proves you only need one, right? The number is 619. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much.
Before I introduce our speakers today, I wanted to ask Andy to bring up a peace lily, because Jean, I need your attention.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The club wants to offer you this peace lily in memory of your brother. Your brother, Larry, you took great care of him, and I know it's a big loss, and we hope that this would bring some springtime and warm up the memories. You're welcome. Okay, thanks. And then just a very typical Rotary story as I'm bringing that pot in. Of course, Jean says, "Hey, can I help you bring whatever?" I'm like, "No, because it's for you." And then at least a dozen Rotarians said, "Hey, can I help you with that?" So what a helpful group we have here. Anyway, let's get to the speakers because this is a really good program. Almost a year ago, I attended a program that's put on by Washington Township, right? And it was Until Help Arrives. And I don't even know how it came into my inbox, but it seemed like a really good idea to go to it because, quite frankly, you never know when you're going to come across something traumatic. And what are you supposed to do until help arrives, other than just, wring your, hands and cry and all that good stuff? What should you do? And this was just a fabulous program. So today we have with us the Battalion Chief, Mike Riebel, and Communications Manager, Stephanie Skipworth. And let's see, Mike has been with the Township since 1996, so long timer there. And Until Help Arrives has been a program since 2017. And what Stephanie does is she oversees the dispatchers. So when you call 911, what are you supposed to say? That kind of thing. So we're very pleased to have them today. Let's give them a warm Rotary welcome.
Let's wait for a second to get the slideshow that we're going to use put up.
No pressure.
No, not at all.
So Mike, while they're doing that, I think it's important to know that you guys offer a ton of great classes. And I think that this particular class you're gonna be offering soon.
Yeah, we have another version of this class, the full class coming up on April 23rd. At the end, we have QR code if you're interested in a little bit more information with it, that we'll be able to show. As a township though, we provide everything from car seat safety checks to CPR classes to babysitters classes. Really, if you have any interest, you can go to our website, wtwp.com. Then you can look and see the list of educational options that we have to offer for the community. If you're not really aware, Washington Township is the fire and EMS provider for the city of Dublin. A lot of times, the people, you have the Dublin Police. Well, we're the township that covers the area. We have pretty much an agreement with the city that we work very well together. We're going on any emergency. If we're working with, like on an auto accident, the two agencies have worked very closely together on all that because we are looking to provide the best community service that we can. So what we have, the class is called Until Help Arrives. It was developed by FEMA.
Would you use the mic for two reasons? Just because the room has a lot of back noise. We want to make sure that any of us on Zoom will hear your presentation.
Did they set it up?
Yes.
No mic.
Okay, this better? All right, so what we're trying to do, how many people, when they left their house today, thought, hey, I may be the first person on the scene of an auto accident? Or before I leave the house, I may have a loved one that has an injury at home that requires someone to step in immediately to help out. Did anyone even think about this when you left the house today? How many times have you passed an auto accident on the way to whatever your destination is? All the time. Somebody is going to be an immediate responder. That's going to be the first person on the scene right after an event happens. It doesn't have to be like an act of violence. It could be an auto accident. It could be a fall. What it's going to be is someone that the injury is enough where it needs to have intervention. And would you be prepared? Would you feel prepared to be the one to provide those initial actions, that initial care to the injured person to help mitigate the injury, to help the process get started for the emergency response system, and would you know how to provide comfort to that person? What we're going to do, this class typically is about a 2.5 hour class. You get 30 minutes of it. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff really quick and condensed, but we're going to hit some highlights that we think. So when the first thing, the one that we want to see happen, we're going to talk about, when you call 911, what goes on? What does the system look like? What's going on in the background? When you are talking on the phone with the call taker, and what information are they getting from you to relay to the first responders, and why that's critical? How words you use, how details you give really impacts the response that you are getting to that call. We're going to teach you how to not become part of the scene. That's one of the biggest things we want. If we want to train people to be comfortable stepping in to act, but don't become part of the scene. But make sure you understand how to look around to see what the environment's telling you, and if it is safe to help, or sometimes you just need to wait for us to get there. We're going to talk to you about what to do for bleeding control. We have tourniquets here that we're going to demonstrate how you put them on. If you go to the class, you walk out with a tourniquet. We give you one after teaching how to use it as well. But it's some of the reasons about how do we stop the bleed? What are some of the steps we take before the first responders get there that you can help by critical minutes to change the survivability rate of an injured person? We're going to talk to you a little bit in the full class, a little bit more about how to disposition someone, how we want to make sure that they're breathing effectively, because that's going to be one of the key things on making sure that any other treatment that we give is going to be effective. And just really how just something as simple as the human factor, the touch, the talking, the calming words, stuff like that can really help someone in a traumatic situation. We'll see if the video, okay, there you go. Here's a video talking just a little bit about the importance of stepping in, getting involved, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the response times we have in Dublin.
Any first responder will tell you, it is rare, really rare to show up on any scene, whether it's a fire, whether it's, someone sick, whether it's, a cat in a tree, where someone isn't trying to do something. We do a pretty good job as professional medical response. We do a good job getting them quickly, but when we get there and nothing's been done, when we get there and there's been a huge time lapse, when we get there and it's been 30 minutes, and the person's now cold, maybe hypothermic, being cold, being traumatic, we know that. The person is in a position where they can't breathe well, right? And they haven't been getting enough oxygen. That kills you. We know that 30 minutes is a long time. The person who's bleeding and they continue to bleed, and there's a giant puddle of blood on the ground that should be inside that person's body. We know that. So can we keep them alive? Maybe. But it's hard. It's a team. We're a team. We're here to help you. We need you to help us.
People are afraid if they don't have formal training that they might make the situation worse. Really, it's very, very hard to make the situation worse. If you're in a situation where someone's suffering some kind of life-threatening emergency, it's pretty hard to make it worse for them than it already is. It's much better to try to do something. You're very unlikely to cause them harm. So it's better to, at least give it a shot. It's a difference for that person, because we are quick, we're not that quick.
If people knew that they could intervene and do something immediately, would help enormous numbers of people. The first thing you can do is just stay away.
All right, so if you look at on the slide, the EMS response time for a national average is showing 6 to 9 minutes. In the city of Dublin, Washington Township, we have 4 stations that covers all of the city and of the township. And we have station 93, that's at Brandon Muirfield. We have station 91 at Shire Rings and Avery. We have station 95 at Blazer Memorial Parkway and the Water Tower. And we have station 92 at Hardin Riverside. So geographically, that gives us a quick response time to stay within the national standards. With us, we are looking at around 4 to 4.5 minutes is our department's average out there. And that's a really fast response time. Unless someone's not breathing, someone's in cardiac arrest, someone has a bleed that's uncontrolled. Those are factors that really will impact the survivability. Now, if you look at the way we have it set up too, if we have, I said 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes is pretty average on the response time. So let's walk through what that looks like. You have someone has an injury. You want to call 911. Our department standard is we have, during the day, we have 1.5 minutes to stop whatever we're doing to get either get our fire gear on or get onto the medic and mark responding. So at that point, you're looking at 1.5 minutes already passed. That's not including when the call comes into 911. The standard that NREC has, the agency, is going to be 1 minute to process that call and get it out to either police or fire. So you have 1 minute that the call is taken. You have the 1.5 minutes for us to get on the truck and go. You have the 4.5 minutes for us to get there, if the system is working perfectly that day. So think about how much time has already passed before we even show up to start that next intervention. So if we have someone that they're not having any kind of helpment, any treatment going through at this point, that's where we're going to have the impact on survivability. So what we're trying to get people to do is understand how to be comfortable on stepping in, how to act, what actions you can take to make a big difference with that.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I'm somewhere in Dublin and I see something and I call 911. Does it know I'm in Dublin? Does it go to a central call center? How does it get routed to the right thing? Do they know it's in Dublin?
That's a fantastic question that the second half of this is going to cover. We're going to go pretty in depth about how the 911 system works and what's going on in the background.
Thank you.
There. Now, it's something that we just said, that's the time that passes if the system's working perfect. In the city of Dublin, right now, our current number is 36% of the time. We have more than one call going on at the same time. So your closest medic may not be the one that you were getting. Now we're having to dispatch one of our other medics. So if you're at Brand Road, you may be getting a truck coming from Shire Rings and Avery. They may be coming from Hardin Riverside. Now you're adding on 2 to 3 minutes of response time with it. So that's where we want people to be comfortable on acting and stepping in to be a part of that intervention. When for EMS, we look at for a traumatic injury. We're always trained from the start. We have the golden hour that we are trying to meet. That means from the time of the injury until that patient is in surgery. We want it to have under 60 minutes. If it's under 60 minutes, survivability rates, they escalate astronomically on there. Once we get over that hour, then the viability of the patient and the success of getting them back, it drops because of that. So, but the first part is having that early intervention. So what we want to do, we want to be stopping the clock. So people will ask, what do we consider a life-threatening bleed? And what is a lot of blood? So how would you define a lot of blood loss for somebody? Okay. If you look at it, basically, if you look and say, man, that's a lot of blood, then count it. That's a lot of blood. It doesn't worry about your training. Don't try and do any fancy method and say like, well, if I have like 3 palms full of blood, then that's a sick person. If you think it's a lot of blood, then then be willing to step in and do something to intervene. Because what we want to try and do, once the blood leaves the body is unable to function the way it's designed. And we want to stop the blood, keep them from losing the blood by 2 different ways. We have direct pressure and we have tourniquets. That's the primary ways we're going to do it. What we don't want to do is just put a bandage on it, because if we put a bandage or a cloth on it, what is that doing to the blood? It's absorbing it. It's not keeping the blood in the system where it needs to be, into the body where it needs to be. So how do we do this? Typically, if you look, you want to see if it's blood, you're going to see if it's coming out under pressure. If it's under pressure, it's likely going to be an arterial bleed. And that is the one that's coming like when the heart pumps and that full contraction, when it's coming out with the most force, that's the arteries that's carrying that blood. Because of that, think about the way the body is designed. If it's really important, it's protected. All of the heart, the lungs, everything's protected by your chest cavity. So if you look at this, if you have the arteries, where do they run? They're very deep and they're right alongside bones. So when it comes from the heart, you have the aorta runs right down along the spine. So it's pretty well protected. You go through and you look at the arteries are going to go along the arms and legs down through the groin, but they're right against the bone. So what we're trying to do, whenever we put on tourniquets and whenever we do direct pressure, we're trying to take all of that tissue that is around the artery or that damaged vessel, and we're trying to compress it against the bone that's there. So that takes a lot of force. It takes a lot of effort. Do you think that's something that you're going to be able to just hold and squeeze for a very long period of time? Initially you can stop it, you can put pressure on it, but think of this, if someone has a cut on their wrist and you're trying to stop that pressure and you walk up and you squeeze it and you hold it. How long did we just talk about for the system? If the system 911 system is working perfectly, how many minutes did we just talk about that it's going to take before we get there? Longer than that. 6 to 7 minutes is realistic. Do you think you're going to have the strength to hold that really tight for 6 to 7 minutes? So you're going to have to start thinking about what are some alternative means of doing this. You're going to be able to use body parts. You can use an elbow to lean into it. You can use your knee to push into it. You can also, like I said, that's going to be for the direct pressure. But then as we start looking towards tourniquets are the next step, because that allows us to step back from that patient, from that, and then assess what else is going on with the scene. So we want to do a tourniquet. One thing we want to consider as we go to apply it, we're thinking if you have a wound down here, we always teach just go high and right by that joint, because right now you have 2 bones, 1 bone. And if we're trying to take that tissue and squeeze it against 1 bone, you want to go against the long bone. So the femur and the humerus is going to be the long bone that we're trying to compress that against. So we'll go high onto the arm with that. If we have something that is abdominal on there, then that's just going to have to be direct pressure, because there's no way to tourniquet that area. If you have something like a neck wound, same thing. You're going to put direct pressure. You're not going to put a tourniquet on somebody's neck. That's not going to work out very well for them. So the 2 main types of tourniquets that you're going to see. We have the combat application tourniquet, the CAT tourniquet on here, and a SWAT T on here. This was designed by the military. It's basically designed for 18 to 48-year-old males. It works great, but it doesn't work very well for small frame people or children on here. So we'll show how this applies here in a minute. The next one you're going to see is the SWAT T. And this is like the glorified exercise band. Has a little bit more strength to it, but at the same time, once you put this on and you apply it, then it's going to continue to restrict area. It's going to compress that whole time. So this is one that will fit all sizes as well. Look at this for a second. So what they're trying to do with this also, it's called a SWAT T because it's stretch, wrap, and tuck. We work with a lot of cops. Cops can't use a lot of big words. We have to be able to keep it simple for them. So we make sure anyone, we can put pictures for them. So if they can't figure that part out, you stretch. You want to make the diamond. You want to change the shape. You can put the picture, show you how you want to do it. So when we go to do the SWAT T, the first wrap doesn't really, you don't have to be tight on that. All you're trying to do is give it a chance to have contact on itself. Once you get that, you're going to take it and you're going to stretch it 8 to 12 inches down.
Quick. Yeah. No.
So what's going to help is when we do a tourniquet on here, when it has a broad base, that helps protect the tissue underneath it. So when you get that wrapped around, what you want to do for the last one is leave yourself a bite, bring it around, and that's your tuck part. Now at this point, that's going to continue to compress. If you were to check here and you want to see here for a second, her arm is going to start changing color because the circulation has been, if not completely cut off, is greatly restricted. So a couple things about tourniquets. I know that when I was growing up, I was always taught that if you put on a tourniquet, then what happens to the limb underneath it? You're going to lose it. That's not true. There are some things, if you do a tourniquet, a broad base helps protect the tissue to make sure that there's no damage. One of the information side that comes out of long periods of war from Afghanistan, from Iraq, a lot of tourniquet studies were done. Things that were found were there were tourniquets that were applied on the battlefield. And as the wounded soldier was moved all the way and flown to Germany for surgery, 8+ hours later, they were still able to remove the tourniquet and refuse that area. Where you get damage from a tourniquet is if it is too thin and it does cellular damage as you cut it in, like a shoestring, a wire, something like that is going to cause damage to the point where then you would probably lose that limb beneath it. Typically though, for most tourniquets, like the CAT and the SWAT T, you're not going to have that kind of a damage with it. So with the Steph can actually self-apply this one. That's the nice part with it too. So with the CAT T, you can slide it over the extremity, or you can just unloop it and hook it back in just like a belt. Thing with this, when you do your first wrap, you want that first wrap to be as tight as you can and completely wrapped onto that Velcro. Because once you get it there, now you have what's called the windlass. That's where you're going to twist and tighten it. If you have it tight the first time, 2 to 3 turns is about all it's going to take to shut off the blood flow from there.
There's a new one.
Yeah. So if you look the way that's set up, what she was having me move, when you get that tight, what you don't want to do, once you capture that progress, you don't want to lose it. There is a C clamp that's on the top. And you tuck it into that, and that's going to hold that in place. You can throw the Velcro strip over top of it, and now that tourniquet is effectively shutting off the blood flow to wherever that wound was down below that area. When we talk about that, that's a little bit better too. If you're trying to do like a thigh or a larger muscle, like muscle mass, that's going to be more effective than the SWAT T, just because it's easier to tighten it. The part of the difference you get with these two would be the cost. If you want to find the CAT tourniquets that's not one of the knockoffs that's going to have problems with it, they're going to be around $30 on there. The SWAT Ts are around 10 to 15 now. But they're the ones that it's easy to carry. But that's kind of where, if you look at the two, like if you're going to run into those two types. Citizen Aid is a company that has put out a lot of pre-manufactured, the active bleeding kits. You'll see them in airports, you'll see them in schools. Franklin County EMA had a large purchase and they gave them to the schools, the first responders and all that. So they're manufactured kits that has gloves, the the SWAT T tourniquet, and a few other items that's going to be effective on helping treat and help stop the bleed. If you're out in public, you may look because they usually try and keep them close to wherever the AEDs are. If you have an AED, a lot of times you'll see the bleeding control kit as well. So, like I said, we're going through a lot of stuff kind of quick. What we're going to do now, Stephanie's going to talk to you about what happens when you call 911. What's the process, like what they're doing in the background, and we have a couple of the 911 calls used for examples.
Okay, so for the city of Dublin, we are Northwest Regional Emergency Communication Center. We are the second floor of the police department that you can see going over top of Emerald Parkway. We are city of Dublin employees, but we do dispatch for Dublin and Washington Township, Worthington Police and Fire, Hilliard Police, Norwich Township Fire, and Upper Arlington Police and Fire. We answer all wireless 911 calls from around 270 and 71 on the northwest side down past 270 in Roberts. So not only are we answering calls for Dublin and the communities we serve, we're also answering all of those cell phone calls around us. Last year, our 911 center took around 48,000 911 calls. So we answer a lot of calls and then transfer them out to the agencies that are going to service them. So with that being said, how does 911 work? If you're calling from a cell phone, your cell phone will hit the nearest cell phone tower to you. That cell phone tower is predetermined on where it routes based on the number of people in that area in the jurisdiction. So if you're on Sawmill Road, there's a chance that if you're on the west side of the roadway, you're going to come to our 911 center. If you're on the east side of the roadway, you may go to Columbus Police. So it's going to be based on your location. With that being said, the very first and most important thing that we need when you call 911 is where you're at. Cell phones today do not give us an exact location all the time. So cell phones, depending on what applications you have turned on, whether or not you have your GPS turned on, we might not get an accurate location. Some older cell phones, all we're getting is the cell phone tower that you're hitting off of and an accuracy of about 50 meters. If you think about Emerald Parkway and 270 running parallel, 50 meters in 6 to 7 minutes of response time could be bad if it looks like you're on 270 and we send help to Emerald Parkway. So location is the first and most important thing. We do have an application available to us in our dispatch center called Smart 911. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend downloading that app. Smart 911 is what's helping 911. 911 is way behind the curve with technology. This company, Smart 911, what it does is it's completely private. You go to smart911.com or in your app store and download this app. And what it is you can create a safety profile. Most importantly, that app, when you call 911 and the center you hit has that technology, it's going to access every single application on your phone that you gave permission to get your location. And for those of you that don't know, every single app you download, games included, are constantly getting your location. So when you call 911, that application opens up in the background and will send us all of that information. It is accurate up to about 3 feet most times. So highly recommend getting that. You can put emergency contact information, preferred hospitals, all kinds of information in there. The thing to remember is it's completely private. We can't get that information unless that device calls 911. We do that on purpose because that is sensitive information. And if we keep that information, it's now public record. So this is a completely private app, but we highly recommend that you download that to assist us in your location. We had 2 calls in particular where we had elderly people call who were having problems breathing. One woman tried to give us her location, couldn't give it to us, went unconscious and stopped breathing, but she had Smart 911. So we had her home address. We have the code to get in her house and we were able to get to her. So it's extremely important. So what happens when you call 911? When the 911 call comes into the center, you get a call taker. That may be a dispatcher or it may be a dedicated call taker. All of our dispatchers go through 6 months of initial training and ongoing training. So no matter what position they're working, whether it's fire, police, or call taking, they're trained in all of them. So at 911 call comes in, within 60 seconds, we're getting the location and what's going on. As that call taker's taking that information, the fire department's already being dispatched, the police are already being dispatched. A lot of people get confused when they call 911, because we're asking lots of questions, and you'll frequently hear it in our calls. Where's help? Aren't you sending help? Why are you asking all these questions? It's because in our center, we have people behind us getting help going as we're continuing to get that information. Most important things when you call 911, where you're at. That includes if you're in a building, where in the building, and what's the closest door to get to you. If you're on the freeway, what do you see around you? What was the last exit you passed? Once we find out where you're at and what's going on, we're going to start asking safety questions. Are you safe? Is the patient safe? If it's an active incident, we're only going to keep you on the phone as long as it's safe for you to stay on the phone. We're also then going to switch and try to determine, are there any safety factors for our responders? I'm not going to send the fire department in if I have somebody that's threatening to kill themselves, because I don't want my responders to go in who are not trained and not equipped for that. So there may be a possibility these guys do what we call staging while the police go in and secure the scene, then your fire will go in. And then lastly, we want a name and phone number. A lot of people get upset when we ask for names and phone numbers. That's because if we were to disconnect, we need to be able to get back in touch with you. More importantly, if you're a witness to a crime or a victim, we want to be able to reach back out to you. Your 911 dispatchers will assess what's going on. They'll take appropriate action by dispatching equipment, and they'll try to keep you as safe as possible. All of our dispatchers are emergency medical dispatch certified. What that means is if you have somebody that's unconscious, not breathing, we're going to walk you through CPR. All of our dispatchers are trained to be calm in every situation. So frequently, most of our job is calming people down, giving them direction, getting them to give that help until help arrives while these guys are on the way. So that's just a smart 911. Like I said, you can get to it through the app store. You can also sign up for weather alerts and crime alerts. And that's for all of our communities we serve. All right, so like Mike said, this is a very large class. We try to condense the important stuff into. That QR code will take you to Washington Township's website to sign up for the class. At this point, we've taught thousands of people this class, including all the Dublin City school teachers at their in-service days. So we'd love for you guys to come join us. It's an exciting class. And yeah. One additional app we have is What 3 Words. So What 3 Words, you can download through the App Store or go to what3words.com. That is a company in Sweden that has taken every single location on this earth and condensed it to a 3 foot by 3 foot square. That 3 foot square has 3 very unique words that if you don't know where you're at, let's say you're out on the golf course and you don't know what hole you're on, and suddenly somebody goes down and needs some medical attention, you can pull that up and it'll give you 3 unique words. You can give the dispatcher, which will then give them the exact latitude and longitude that you're at and helps get responders into you. It's pretty cool. So my 3 words is gonna be different than your 3 words. So, thank you.
Real quick. The way that worked, just even last shift, we got called out about 7 in the morning on a high-speed auto accident. So we go respond to an area, we're not finding anything in that area. And one of the dispatchers said, we typed in what 3 words, if you can check it. So they gave me the words on there. I was able to pull over, put it in my app, and it took me right back to where the call, the identical spot the call had come in. On this one, it was an iPhone call. Because you know when they have the velocity, like the high impact notification on there, somebody had left their phone on top of their car. It finally decided to fall off and around Riverside Drive. But when the phone detected a high impact, it makes a 911 call and it has a recorded message that leaves that phone open on there. So I was able to go back to that site using those words, find the phone, shut it down, give it back to law enforcement, try and get back to the owner. So it's something where it's that effective on something emergency or not. But if you're some of the lights going outdoors, if you like to go boating, it works. You know, any place you go, it's going to give you those 3 words and give responders the exact location on where they need to go for that.
So we have just a few minutes for questions. Anyone have questions?
You recommend as a tourniquet if you don't have one of those things. It's curved or something.
Yeah, the question was like what you use for like makeshift tourniquets. You know, a lot of times you would see where people will try and use a belt. One thing with a belt would be the tough part, trying to get it tight enough. And once you do get it tight, you can't, you have to capture whatever pressure you've already held. That's the difficulty with it. So unless it's, like if it's a leather belt, if you're trying to use the windlass and twist, it's not gonna be as effective on there, but you can use a shirt, you can use, from something, anything you can really tighten, but if you wanna make sure you have a wider base to it, like at least a couple inches of the base to it, because that's gonna be what helps keep the tissue damage from occurring. I know with the schools, we went through, we were teaching some of the schools what to use within a classroom. So they might have to use shirts and a bunch of pencils together to use that to twist, or a stapler, just in things like that, and ways to help capture that. But yeah, anything that like once you, the big thing is whatever you use, if you do get it tight, you don't want to lose that progress with it.
Yeah, just choose the protocol, an individual without anybody else with them at home calls, passing out, help, come and get me. Doors locked. Does that give the help people the authority to break in to the home
If
to help that person?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if, what we'll try and do, we try and find other ways in that's, you know, maybe not just busting your door down.
Right.
But if we look in and we can see somebody there, or we know that there's an open line, something like that, we know it's a critical incident, then yeah, we'll have law enforcement go with us, but we will break into the house to go help out, right? Yes.
I just want to say that if you attend the class, it's goes into a lot more depth, but you also do get to hear some 911 recordings, which I think are really quite interesting. And I always think of 911 as medical emergencies, but I think one of them you played was I don't want to say active shooter, but maybe it was.
There was, yeah.
Yeah, and just, you know, we don't want to think that's going to happen to us in Dublin, Ohio, but it was kind of a wake up call.
Yeah.
Mike, I have a question for Stephanie. How many dispatchers do you have, Stephanie, to cover that broad area? And secondly, if I may, we have an EMS program, Queens Week at Tolls, and part of the program are dispatchers. At our program last night, our EMS students served as our parking guides, and I had an opportunity to talk to a couple of these young ladies that are in that program. It's fascinating to me, but also the breadth of the coverage. So how many of your?
So currently we have 29 dispatchers, we have 4 supervisors and 3 managers. Depending on the time of the day, we may have, the least amount we have on duty is 5 during overnight hours. So you have a police dispatcher for each area and 1 fire dispatcher, and they all take calls. First thing in the morning from 6:45 a.m. to 10:45 a.m., we have 6 on duty. That's a dedicated call taker. From 10:45 a.m. to 10:45 p.m., we have 7 on, because we have to have a secondary fire dispatcher. I'm glad you mentioned tolls. I'm actually on the advisory committee for the law enforcement one. I got them started with the dispatching in there because I thought I want to be an officer when I graduated high school, because my dad was. Got an Explorer program, started dispatching because you could do it at 18, and here I am 23 years later. So thank you to tolls. I'm thankful for that opportunity, and I think it's a good thing to do. But yeah, so all of our dispatchers, like, we also up for special events, Memorial Tournament, Irish Festival, 4th of July last year, we had 16 dispatchers on duty to cover all of the cities. So we take that call load into consideration.
Thank you.
Does the Smart 911 work anywhere?
Smart 911 will work if the department that your call goes into has. So in Ohio, like Hamilton County area has that technology. Not every dispatch center has it, but if
West
they do,
Virginia may not work.
it may or may not work. Yeah. So, but if it does,
The other one though would.
what 3 words would work? Yeah, that.
3 words, but is it?
What3words.com. And that, even if the dispatch center doesn't have the funding and the technology, you can tell them, go to what3words.com. Here are my 3 words, and they can type it in. Yep.
So thank you so much for coming to the club and speaking with us. And more importantly, thank you for your service to the community. And please extend our thanks to your colleagues as well. Our closing quote is from a paramedic of 36 years. I don't need to save everyone's life, just so long as I can save someone's. Thank you and see you in 2 weeks.
Jane will lead
Oh, that's what I'm.
Okay.